Right. Welcome to this Audit and Risk and Finance Committee meeting, making the first one of the year.
Yes, thank you.
In autumn, right? You're seeing some autumn rains here, right? Do we have volunteer to say the opening karakia? Looking to my right. Sue, thank you.
Thanks. Hora te marino kia whakapapa pūnamo te moana, hei puarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei, araha atu araha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa.
Thank you. Right, apologies. We've got a round of apologies. Lana, we've got Councillor Mike.
Councillors Howard, Manderson, Paniora for non-attendance, and Councillor Wilson-Collins for lateness.
Can I have a mover, please? I think that was Mayor Craig, seconded. Deputy Mayor Jonathan, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Confirmation of the minutes. I don't see any need to change the agenda around. We do have audit coming online shortly in there. So can I have a mover for the confirmation of the agenda, please? Yep. Craig, seconded. Thanks, Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Are there any conflicts of interest that need to be declared for items on the agenda? None noted. Just note if there's anything that comes to your attention, just bring it to our attention. Thank you. Public forum, no public. Confirmation of our minutes. Harold, on 12th, we'll take them both together, 12th of September and 28th of November. Do I have?
Sorry, through the chair, please note that Jimmy Larson was not present at one of those meetings,
Yep.
so cannot move or second.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Craig. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you. First item 4.1, our work program update. Thanks, Sue.
Okay, through the chair, just the normal work program. The only thing I will highlight is that we will have the NZTA have done an audit, investment audit on us last month, and we've got the draft report, but so the next time we meet, we'll have the final report. You can expect that for, but it's not on the agenda this week.
Okay. Any questions on the work plan? One thing, if no one's got any questions, just on page 21 of the agenda under risk management, it's got, we don't actually have a date on it, right? And the committee will review the risk management framework. I know we don't have a plan on that, and I just wonder, have we got the resources to do that, and have we got the time to do it, and is the appropriate time to do it?
So through the chair, possibly September, although that's part of when we're doing the annual plan. It might be June, actually. We might be able to look at that. I'm unsure. The only thing I think that needs major change is possibly looking at the risk framework itself. The table.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And it may be that we need to actually have some sort of facilitation around that.
That's where I was actually wondering, with the committee's indulgence, right, whether it's actually a workshop of the whole of council, while we've got the delegations to sort of do it. I just wonder it actually does affect everybody, and it might be a really good education process for elected members. I'm just trying to juggle that with everything else that needs to happen.
So through the chair, maybe the best date might be December. I mean, then we've got a new council, because I'm just thinking we've got a new council.
To be honest, right, right? My view is December's not a great time. Particularly if you've got new councillors trying to find their way, it'd almost be better to sort of do it early next year in February. And as you suggested, have it facilitated. And then potentially schedule a review 18 months later, once we've actually got it in place and then starting to use it and seeing how it's going. And that, to me, is a workshop with both elected members and staff, because staff have then got to use it as one of their toolboxes.
That would be fine. Yes,
All
I
right.
could do that.
So I don't know how we record that, Alana, in terms of, because our work plan only really goes out to December.
So through the chair, we'll put it on the action plan.
Yeah.
Okay,
You happy with that?
absolutely. All right. That was my own. No other comments from the committee? So do I have a mover for the recommendation? We probably just don't need to record the decision about that work plan. I'll move. Do I have a seconder?
Yep.
Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Have we got Deloitte's online?
We do, yes.
Okay, so the next item, Jesse, you can introduce this one and then introduce our people from Deloitte. Thank you, Jesse. It's 4.2, our risk, the annual report, external reporting update.
Good morning, everybody. This is just an approval paper to get Deloitte engaged for our audit. We have a new audit partner this year, Benny Grayling, replacing Bryce Henderson, who's experienced and has been in the local government sector for a long time. The plan at the moment is that the interims are starting later this year, 26th of May to the 23rd of June, and the final audit is commencing later as well, 8th of September. This was based on the capacity and resourcing of the audit team, as well as a decision to improve the work that we have ready for the auditors, so that we're readier to have them. So the focus of the audit this year, similar to last year, there's quite a few common matters that were in last year's audit: management override of controls, re-evaluation of infrastructure assets, which we should be able to just have a peer review on our waters assets this year, legislative compliance around our rates revenue, statement of service performance again, local waters done well as a piece of the audit, related party transactions and conflicts of interest, procurement again, and central government funding, so external subsidy recognition where there have been issues in the past, and climate change. We currently don't have a fee we've got a fee expectation that it'll be 5% higher than the fee base last year, but that is currently being checked with the OAG. So we haven't got confirmation of that yet, but I'd like to now introduce Benny and Ethan, the auditors.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can I just check? Can everybody see me and hear me? My video seems to be on my side, zooming in and out or stuff, but if everybody can hear me, thank you for the introduction. Yep, very glad to be here. As you said, Benny Grayling, I'm the new engagement partner taking over from Bryce. Yeah, I've got quite a few other councils and experience in the sector. I think between Bryce and myself, we pretty much do all of the audits of the district councils and the regional councils up in the area north of Auckland. So I do Far North District is one of mine, Northland Regional, and I'm also the concurring partner on some of the others around the country for the OAG. And of course, Ethan, you know, who's continuity from previous years. So look, I don't know, covered some of those points at a high level. Would you like me to just, normally the way I present these reports is just at a high level, do a page turn and flick through some of them, if you'd like me to do that?
That'd be great, thanks.
Yeah, so look, just to recap, maybe the purpose of the report is just to lay out, the high level plan to how we're going to approach the audit. As you know, the annual report in itself, which includes the financial statements, it's quite a big document. There's a lot of information in it. We engaged to form a view as to, there's any material misstatement within that. So we look at, everything essentially that goes into the annual report and the accounts, but to varying degrees. And the areas of focus that have been called out in our planning report that's been distributed is it's not the only areas that we do work on, but it's typically the more judgmental, more what we consider more risky areas, or some of the areas that are actually mandated by the Auditor General and the relevant standards that we're having to focus to follow. So if you look on page 6, that's page 6 of our report, which is the executive summary, you can see we summarize them. Therefore, so there's about 5 of them that we call out. I'll just run through them very high level, and please interrupt and ask questions as you wish. So on the management override of controls piece, it's a mandated piece that we need to do. That's around keeping in mind that whilst you have internal controls and a control environment in place, there's always a possibility that fraud could occur through various ways and means. Controls could be overridden by management deliberately. We respond to that by assessing, the various areas where that could occur. For example, journal entries being inappropriately processed through the ledgers, or things being overridden. We do targeted testing on that, and if there's anything that we find, we'll go into that further and report back to you on any issues that are necessary. The second piece is around the revaluation of the infrastructure assets. So you probably, as you're aware, under the accounting standards, there's this rolling cycle whereby at least every 3rd year, certain asset types need to be assessed or revalued to their fair market value, and that revaluation be recorded in the accounts. That in itself is quite a big exercise. There's a lot goes into that in terms of the data, the methodology, the work that the valuers do to come up with a number that says this is the right fair value. So we have to spend quite a lot of time on that to check the data, the methodology, the assumptions. Is it reasonable? And more importantly, how does that reconcile into, the asset system, the asset database? Have you got everything revalued? You should be revalued. Is it complete? Is it accurate? Those types of things. So that's standard across any council, any public benefit entity that has to account for the assets under that methodology. So that's the one big judgment area, is on the assets that are actually revalued. The second piece is for assets that council or management concludes that a revaluation is not necessary because it's not in cycle, still required to then assess, whilst it's not within a 3-year cycle to be revalued, would there potentially be a significant movement in the market had evaluation been undertaken at this point in time, and would it potentially lead to a materially different number than what it's carried on the books? If the answer is yes, we should then actually do an out of cycle valuation. If not, that's fine. You carry on. That assessment has to be made regardless of whether you're revaluing it or not. So that's what we'll be looking at. And you can see we've got some commentary on there on some of the issues we had, from what I understand, in the past, in terms of the data from the asset register following through to the actual valuations, and how does it make it into the accounts. So I'll pause there on that one and see if there's any questions, or I can clarify any of that, but that's probably one of the biggest areas.
Yeah, question. Thanks, Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Bernie, for this presentation. And I just have a couple of questions. You have mentioned somewhere in the report that councillors are responsible for lots of things.
Yes.
And they should be approaching some way to you to, not as whistleblower, but as a caution or something like that. You also mentioned that the two areas of concern or connection or I would say investigation are the management override of control or overview of controls of procurement and contracts relating to if there's any related party involved. You mentioned somewhere, that's one area. So I'd like you to focus on that more because we have done a lot of work and we are planning to do a lot of work, and we are trying to make procurement process as transparent as possible.
Yeah.
Would it be possible?
Yeah, so yes, the short answer is yes. I just need to clarify the context in which that is for. So the purpose of our audit that we engage on under the Public Auditing Act is not to form a view over council's internal controls. It's to form a view over the accuracy of the financial statements. Right? Now, as part of that process, we look at not every control, but certain controls that are in place that affect the financial reporting. Now, you're right, procurement is a control that's, it does ultimately affect financial reporting. The extent to which we do that, we look at, what controls are in place. And if we identify any major deficiencies in them, we do report them. So yes, for the procurement one, one of the focus areas of the OAG is to look at any major contracts, for example, that have been procured during the period. We will do a specific test depending on how many there are. And get back to you on it. But it's with an audit, a financial statement audit lens primarily that we look at. It's not to form a view on. We can't give you a report at the end of the day that says, in our view, your controls are good or bad. We make control observations as part of the financial process. But yeah, and the same with the management override of controls. It's a financial statement audit lens. But we don't go beyond what would be required under the auditing standards for that. Yeah, if we are required to do more, then we can always do that, but it will be a separate type of engagement.
So, but just clarifying, I mean, I'm not telling you to go the nitty-gritty of this whole process. I'm sure you can rely on, we have internal auditors as well. They may be able to give you some findings based on there. You don't have to actually start from A to Z. I think it's worthwhile when you're going through all this to rely on what has been found and what are the overview or management direction. Thank you.
Yeah, we will definitely get the internal audit documents and review those and see what we can. Yeah, we do that as a matter of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? You're going to go through the paper in any further detail, or just staying at that high level?
So I was going to go through the various pieces. So I'll move on to the next piece, which is the legislative compliance and the rates revenue. So look, the rates revenue, for obvious reasons, that's the lifeblood of the organisation. That's where your funding comes from, the biggest chunk of it. Normally, under accounting and auditing legislation, there's a requirement to have a presumed fraud risk attached to that. So, but that's more towards a commercial environment where that is. So we've actually rebutted that risk because it's not like a commercial business where rates are set in legislation. But what we do is we do testing around the rate setting process. There's a legislative compliance checklist that we complete for the OAG on that. And then we test how that actually makes it into the ledger. Has it been recognized at the correct amounts? And ultimately, how much of that has been collected at the end by the end of the financial year? Anything that's outstanding, whether you have sufficient provisioning in place for amounts that are uncollected. Yeah, it's just because it's such a big focus area of the accounts, and that's the primary source of income. That's what we tend to focus on there. The next piece is around the statement of service performance. That's something slightly different from the numbers in the financial statements. The performance measures as part of our audit opinion. Look, there's a new standard that's been in place, I think, for about 2 years now as to how you report those and what they should look like. We've worked through all of that in the past now. It's now just a case of understanding the processes and the controls that council has in place to actually collect the data, monitor it, and actually report that accurately, and whether whatever narratives and explanations are given in the annual report, whether that is appropriate, clear enough, and tells the story in line with the expectations of the legislation. The final bit is around the OAG, the Auditor General audit brief. So each year we get a briefing from the Auditor General in terms of what their expectations are, things they'd like us on sort of, as part of the audit, look out for. And it's pretty standard. So we do testing around sensitive expenditure, probity, and waste. So that's where we go into looking at expense claims, certain types of expenditure that are sensitive, for example, like entertainment and the likes. We look at the council's policies. Are they up to date? Are they fit for purpose? And it's done on a sort of a rotational basis, depending on what it is. So we cover most of that over a 2 to 3 year cycle, and then we report back on that. So that's, again, it's no different from what we did in the past. The other parts around the audit brief, local water's done well, climate change, related parties, those sorts of things, they may or may not directly impact you. So climate change, the ESG stuff, for example, you're not a climate reporting entity like some other PB entities, so probably less of an impact, direct financial statement impact. It's just about whether there's going to be anything in the annual report or in the performance measures to do with climate change. There was obviously a topic of, it's quite topical at the moment, out. Some councils include certain measures in the statement of service performance around greenhouse gas emissions, for example, which could be quite tricky to audit. Local water's done well. It's just something for us to be mindful of, if there's any legislative impact or specific funding that's come in by year end. For that, I don't expect that to have a major impact on our audit for this year. But it's just, and this brief from the OAG gets revised and updated as we go through the process every year as things start to come through. Obviously, the OAG sees what comes out of the sector in general, and they may or may not give directives on expectations or extra things that we need to do as we go along. So those are the key areas of focus. If there's any other questions on any of those that I could clarify, happy to do that.
Any other questions? Thank you for that. I've got 3, and it's probably actually not directly at Deloitte, right? Yeah. But probably at Jesse. The big issue that I have, right, is the revaluation or the fair value assessment. And thanks, Benny, for actually highlighting to the team that you're actually expecting a management paper on this. I actually was aware of one council that did it, passed it over, and didn't provide them the management letter to say, yes, we're happy with it, right? So that's actually, I think, really good that you're actually specifying that out, right? That caused the council a bit of grief because they got criticised in the management letter for not doing it, but they said we didn't expect it, so that's really good. But the question I have is with the lack of asset managers, for the want of a better word, right? That does require a specific knowledge of the asset, right? And it's a question, how are we actually going to manage that when there's actually the asset manager needs to have significant input into that process?
It will still be difficult, and there are vacancies. There are asset managers in the waters, overseeing the assets, and they are doing work on the asset schedules, and they are looking at those. So it will be hard.
Yep.
It will be hard.
And just right, no? I'm not sure whether even Deloitte's aware of this, but Apopo, which right, have just released a new depreciation and valuation guideline. It's only a guideline, but I think that might provide staff and Deloitte with some guidance on how that should be assessed, because I've seen some different ways of doing it, which have caused both auditors and staff some grief, right? I think it's been signed off by OAG with some help from Audit New Zealand, and I think that would also, it was announced a couple of days ago, so you might have access to that already, but I think that would be useful, right, as a guide.
Yeah.
The other question I have is impairment, right? You talk about, Benny, in your report, that lack of maintenance may result in impairment. Can you just unpick that a bit more? Because I thought impairment was actually normally as a result of a sudden event. You know, all of a sudden you discover that you've got an earthquake-prone building rather than lack of maintenance. Yes, lack of maintenance over a long period may result in a sudden decline in an asset, but can you put those two together for me, please?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think now that you mention it, it's more over a longer period of time. You're right. It's I can clarify that in the report, that it's not just short-term maintenance, it's long-term maintenance. You have a sudden event, if maintenance hasn't been kept up, it might not be as resilient as it should have been. Yeah. And look, the impairment question, I suppose, is largely addressed when you do the asset revaluations anyway. That'll be one of the key judgments, of course, that goes into that. It's really more the assets that aren't being revalued that'll be at risk of that. But you're right, and we should clarify that in our report when we finalise it and we update it. Yeah.
And my last question, right, and it's a question probably for Sue rather than you, Jesse, right? Now, we're talking about rates, right, reliance, I would imagine, Sue, that every so often you'll get a legal opinion over the reviewing the funding impact statement and the rates resolution from not every year, but when you make, because that to me is a critical decision-making point, is getting the funding impact statement and the rates resolution correct.
So we do it every year.
Every year? Yeah. Well, that to me, right? And I would imagine that Benny and Ethan can actually hopefully rely on that, providing they're the appropriately qualified to give you that to me should give you a lot of comfort.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's one of the first things we ask for. It's In fact, I don't think I've personally come across a council that does not take legal advice on that every year.
Oh, okay, all right. I won't go there. All right.
Yeah. No, I'm just talking about this.
Yeah. No, but okay. So that to me gives me, right, it should give the council some comfort that our primary income stream, we've got good processes to make sure that we've actually got good, robust, and I think we've learned from the past.
That's right. And then when we're changing our revenue and financing policy, especially when it's in quite a large way, we also are taking on consultants who know what they're doing to make sure we're going through the right process.
Yeah, it's about the process. It's not necessarily about the outcome.
No.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question. I sound very cheap, but this fees we have 300,000. Is it in line with the size of the council you are doing, or is it in just general regardless?
So all these fees are being benchmarked by the OAG against every other council of similar size, similar complexity, and you're 100% in line.
Okay. Thank
probably
you.
Probably at the lower end, if I might add.
Thank you. Appreciate that, man.
Okay. Any other questions? Question probably for Sue / Chief Executive. The resolution that basically we're saying is we are approving the engagement. Right? Do we have delegated authority to approve the engagement as a committee? Sorry, I should have asked you this beforehand. Or do we recommend to council? Right? Or how do we? Because normally the engagement is signed between the Chief Executive and the Mayor. It's my understanding. Is that correct?
Yes.
So through the chair, my understanding is this committee has the responsibility on agreeing and inputting into the audit scope.
Yep.
The letters of engagement will be signed by the chief executive. So perhaps we just delegate that to the chief executive.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yep.
That would be normal, I think.
Yeah,
So,
okay. Yep.
yeah.
So what we should say is actually we approve the engagement of Deloitte for the audit for the council's annual report 24-25, and that do we need to actually acknowledge that the chief executive is then authorised to sign it, or is that sufficient?
No, that's
That's
sufficient
good.
because of the fact he's also got powers of
Okay.
delegation. This is you having input into the.
Okay, right, thank you.
doing.
Clarifying.
Just one point from us. There's also an APL, an audit proposal letter, which
Yep.
is separate to the actual engagement letter that is sitting with the OAG for review at the moment. We're hoping to get approval for that anytime soon. That also needs to be signed. So there's two letters. There's
Yep.
the engagement letter and the APL.
Approves, and I just,
Yep.
through the chair, approves the audit focus for the engagement.
Okay, yep, yep,
Much
all right,
clearer.
all right. Is people comfortable with that?
Yeah.
You happy to move it? Thank you, councillor Ash. Do I have a seconder? I'll second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Our next item. Why did you move, Jessie?
All right.
All right, thank you, Bernie. Ethan,
Thank you,
didn't
everyone.
Say anything. Nice to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you guys too.
Stunned to silence. Yeah.
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 All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right,
you can
good,
listen
thank
in.
you.
You can listen in if you want to, or you can go and do some other work.
We'll go do some other work. I suspect it's nothing to do with you. It's just we're under the pump. We've got a few of these.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All
All right.
See ya. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Right. So next item, 4.3, page 93 of the PDF. Thank you, Jessie. The financial report.
Thank you. So we have presented this financial report to the 31st of January at the council meeting a few weeks ago. So I'm just happy to take questions on this one, as I have presented it to the elected members already.
I have some questions.
So you have some further questions?
I have some questions.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah. Shall I ask now or?
absolutely.
I think page, now there's always a difference between what you see in PDF and what the actual page is. So what preference you have?
The further PDF questions, or the page number at the bottom of the page on the PDF is probably the best number to use.
Okay, thank you. So the page 99, I think it is. Are we there?
Yeah, so we're talking public debt.
No. So that's where the confusion is. So if the PDF one goes, I'm talking eroding budget. Page 99, it tells me. Let's go back. Capital expenditure, maybe. So capital expenditure, it says 101 on the top. It says eroding capital expected to be underspent at the year end, largely the Gabriel recovery work. Now, you also mentioned the work can be carried forward to future financial year without losing NZTA subsidy. My understanding was it is available only till June of this year.
We have an increased subsidy rate that is higher than what we'd budgeted for. The roading team negotiated a higher subsidy rate for the current financial year from 82% to 92%. There's no guarantee that the higher subsidy rate will carry over to the next year, but we most definitely can have it at 82%.
It will be good to have a clarification because I don't want to lose that amount. It's a significant amount. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Anything further, Mr. Chief Executive?
Well, yeah.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. So we covered this off at the briefing quite in depth. We have, as far as the emergency works goes, and by the way, Councillor Nair, I think Jessie did clarify for you, so she answered that question. As far as emergency works goes, we obviously have our independent contractor, Queensland Infrastructure Limited, responsible for that. We are wrapping a lot of support around that. We're trying to ensure we have additional consultants and work to fast forward that emergency work slip program to ensure we spend as much as we can this financial year within the resources that we have to take advantage of the 92% FAR rate, which I understand goes to 82 in 1st of July. So we did cover that in some depth at the last briefing as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's a few questions. I won't ask everything, but on page 98, it shows to me it's district leadership carryover attached to district leadership carryover budget. Now, I don't know which page is yours, but in my is page 98. Can you see that?
Is it under activity
Yes.
expenses? So
Yeah. So district leadership, finance and internal services, it says it's going to be carried over. But my understanding is much of it has been earmarked in one of the council decisions to do some roadworks, 5 million or so.
Yeah, I think you're looking at the carryover budget that is included in the district leadership
Yes.
this year. That is what was carried over from the 2024 year. And I think all that will be planned to be spent. There's not much that's carrying forward from this financial year. But the roading budget is under roading and footpaths in that table.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're just looking at two different things. So happy to take any questions.
Well, as long as it's clear as mud, that's fine. Yeah, the other part is the last probably is the desludging of Mangawhai wastewater plant. It has gone up, I think. And can someone explain, is the process has moved or is the sludge has moved? Why it's moved?
Dual reasons that, Councillor Nair. So the sludging costs have increased. Northland Waste have increased their bin charges by 5% and the tonnage fee by 5%. The sludge is heavier than it used to be as well. We're trying to get it dry so it doesn't cost so much. But it's just a case of it costs more.
I'm just not clear on sludging process. I mean, Daga will be spread it over ground and then it dries up. So it doesn't cost anything. But in Mangawhai, I think we are moving by trucks or whatever it is.
through the chair, can I just explain what happens? So you're right. What happens is Dargaville, it goes through ponds. It actually falls into ponds.
Yeah.
And then every 10 years we desludge the ponds. Costs us $2 million.
Yeah.
Just done that.
Yeah.
It does cost Dargaville.
Yeah.
So what happens in Mangawhai, it goes through a shaking process, I think, and then they get out as much, or pressing process, get out as much liquid as they can, but it's obviously heavier. They've done some tweaking on the plant to make it more efficient, but what's happening is the output of the sludge is not as good. But they're getting much more flowing through to get the extra capacity. Because you recall, we had Clint Cantrell come and talk to us about how they've done some tweaks on the plant. But one of the outputs of that is that sludge has got more water in it. And they'll be looking at that next. But they wanted to increase the capacity, and we've increased the capacity there on the treatment plant, I think, to 3,350 at the moment.
Good. Thank you.
3,550, yeah.
That's it. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions on the financials?
And I've just got one more thing, comment probably to make.
Yep.
Just to make people aware that we are doing really well this year, and we're doing our annual plan, and we have got extra interest costs. Our employee costs are down just because of the vacancies, and there's other areas in the general rate that we've highlighted that we know are going to go well. So we've actually promoted to council this year, which is really unusual that we use, but you won't be aware of, Chair, is that we use some of the surplus this year to subsidise one-off costs in the annual plan for next year.
Please do use the word one-off costs, otherwise, right?
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that's our, so that's our thinking.
Yeah. I mean, to me, right, if I have seen parts of the councils not use the surplus from subsequent years, in subsequent years, right? And that then actually bites you the following year. Because if it's not one-off, right, what happens is the next year you need to find the money that you spent to get back to basis, plus also the money that you actually subsidised from previous years. So it's actually a double whammy, right? And I see that with a council that I reside nearby, they used to use it all the time, right? And then they wondered why they had problems. All right, but that's, thank you for that.
Just to clarify.
Thank you, Sue, that did, right? And so that's a good news story, Councillor Ash.
Very good note. But I just want to clarify one very little thing. Some of the constituents brought out to me, and it might be directed to Sue. Somebody mentioned that public debt still stays at 44 million, in spite of the fact that we resolved to pay off this debt by 300,000 by sale of Ruawai house by the Rapport Drainage Committee. So haven't we used it yet to reduce the debt?
So, Councillor Nair, what happens with our debts that our external debts is a lot of more thinking than just when we get a sale of an asset. So what that sale of asset will do is it will reduce our internal debts and our internal interest charges and our overheads. And our external debt, we take into consideration the whole capital works program as well. So we have capital works that are due to be completed that will use debt. So there's no, it's not good management of treasury funds to break debts early to repay a very small chunk when you're about to get more debts if the capital works program is completed.
This money is sitting in the account.
And that's right, and it is reducing the loan balances internally, so that will see a reduction in interest.
Thank you.
So just to further clarify, we have external loans and internal loans. So the total loans that we actually have is more than the 44 million. And we're keeping books, other books to record those. Okay?
Have a break.
We need a break because technically we don't have a quorum.
Oh.
Right?
No, has gone to toilet, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We can break and have a
All right, thank you. Fine. We need a conversation on financials because we can't move on. Yeah, capital. You were how in terms of impact, right? What does the resulting capital look like in terms of consequences going forward? By, are we on how much of the capital? We don't do it, what's the consequence financially?
Many, we need to, there's many impacts that it has. Our projected budgets show that we expect our cash reserves to be depleted and our debt levels to rise, and it's very hard to estimate what funds we could invest instead of when we don't know really how through we will get, but indications are that we'll carry over about 16.5 million at this stage, and a lot of that will be in roading. 8 million will be in roading.
So what you're saying is that's not, so basically if we look at the table, page 6 of the financial report, right? I know it's different for you, Councillor, on page 98. That's the one with a nice little heads up capital expenditure summary. So what you're saying is you are anticipating that of the approved budget of 74 million in total, you're expecting of that 16 million be carried forward.
Correct.
Which is actually an improvement on last year where we carried over 28 million.
That's correct. And in addition to the carry forwards, 2 to 3 million is being reduced from the program altogether.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you for that. So no further discussion. Can I have a mover for the recommendation that we note the financial report to January 2? Thank you, Councillor Jonathan. Seconded. Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Just on that, councillors, we've only got 4 of us as a quorum, so if someone leaves the room, we've got to suspend the meeting, so just be aware of that. Thank you. Next item, Treasury Report 4.4. Thank you, Julia. We take your report as read. Key highlights. There are no lowlights, are there?
Not at all.
Any further information you want to bring to the team's attention?
Yes, our external debt balance remains at 44 million. We're refinancing 7 million that is falling due in April. Once we refinance this debt at the end of June, we'll be out of compliance with our treasury policy in the 0 to 3 year bucket. However, following PwC, our treasury advisor's advice, we are looking to extend our cash advance facilities with BNZ and ANZ. Currently, they are $5 million each. BNZ is due to mature on 30th of June 2026, ANZ 30th of June 2027. We're looking at extending those to 2029 for BNZ and to 2030 for ANZ, which will maintain the compliance with Treasury policy. It's the cheapest option.
Yeah, I hear you. So when will you actually be able to negotiate with those 2 entities?
I have entered into negotiations already, managed to save some money on the line fee, particularly with ANZ. And with BNZ, we're maintaining the same fees. So we've got a saving overall by extending. However, there are some minor legal fees that we need to pay in terms of getting the extension drawn up from ANZ.
So, all right, I'm just thinking of when will what's the date we'll go be non-compliant, and by doing this, so if we actually negotiate the agreement before we do the repayment, we will be compliant. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. If we do nothing and refinance our loan that's due to mature 15th of April, at the 30th of June, at our financial year end, we will be out of compliance. But by going ahead and negotiating these extensions on the cash advance facilities, it will mean that at the 30th of June, we will be in compliance. Nobody will be any the wiser that we could have been out of compliance. But I need to bring that to your attention.
Thank you.
And through the chair, the other option was to pre-fund new debt, which we didn't think was suitable.
That's not yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay, can I assume we'll have this negotiations all done and dusted by the 15th of April?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, all right, so yeah. Thank you for that.
Very welcome. I did also just want to point out that as it stands right now, we currently have 26 million in our on-call account with BNZ, which attracts 3.75% per annum. It's the same rate as the OCR. We have considered placing some funds into term deposits. But to be honest, we're earning more interest leaving it where it is in the on-call account. We'd be losing. Plus, we wouldn't be able to have availability of those funds if they were in a term deposit. And with the capital delivery program, sort of ramping up and expectations that the spend will be mostly in line with budget, bar 16.5 million, I think, carryovers. We're going to need as much funds as we can get our hands on.
Okay.
Yes. OCR, as you may well all be aware, was reduced in February by 50 basis points. There's an expectation that it's due to reduce further in 2025 as economic growth recovers. So lower interest rates will encourage spending, higher prices for some of our key commodities, and a lower exchange rate increase export revenues. But there is a lot of global economic unrest at the moment, given the trade barriers and the trade tariffs circulating from the USA. Aside from that, everything all is as per the Treasury report. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask.
I was in another council meeting, which was public, right? So I can talk about it, right? Last week, and that Treasury advisor, slightly different to your one, talked about the economic slowdown in America, right? And that with these trade barriers coming up, that could have a benefit to New Zealand's interest rates, on the basis that if there is a slowdown in America, and they're already seeing signs of it, and it's a 10-year rate is actually falling in America, and New Zealand's long-term interest rates, which we do then use as a benchmark, because they are falling, our long-term interest rates are falling. So it may not actually be of benefit to the mortgage holders, because generally that's based on traditionally the OCR. But when we are borrowing long-term through LGFA, those 5+ year rates that we get are heavily influenced by the 10-year rate.
God.
So there is actually also some potential good news on the horizon for long-term borrowings should the council need to, and that will also impact on the swap rates as well. And I'm sure if you'd heard that or not.
I hadn't actually, but I'll go and look into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think what you have said is that unrest, that uncertainty in the global trading environment does elevate risk. I was talking to someone a couple of weekends ago about gold and how that's just going through the roof, which indicates high uncertainty. When the gold price goes through the roof, indicates a high degree of uncertainty in the world economy, and that will flow through to New Zealand and interest rates. All we know is there's a huge amount of uncertainty out there.
Yes.
I won't take it personally, it's only a fly.
I can make a comment. I mean, being a banker for a long time, uncertainty also brings in the devaluation of real estate, and the market doesn't seem happy. The New Zealand economy is based on real estate going up. So we can't really just consider interest rates are going to help us. And there are more things, and I suspect that there are more challenges for New Zealand than benefit coming from this tariff war. Yeah. Anyway, that's my view.
Yeah. So all we know is there's huge uncertainty.
Yes. Which is not good.
Uncertainty is no good for anybody. All right.
Thank you.
So thank you for that in terms of the making sure that we're in policy. So is it worth noting in the resolution that we just note the actions to remain within policy?
Yes, that would be good.
Okay, so I'm happy that we note the Treasury report to December 24 and note the actions being taken to remain within policy. It covers off your extension of the facility. You've got it now, have you? All right.
Yes.
Do I have a seconder for that? So Ash, any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Next item.
We able to have a wee break?
Would you like a wee break?
Yeah, please.
Right. June for what? How long do you need? 5?
Yep, no longer.
No longer than 5 minutes. Thank you. Very good, thank you. Next item, 4.5, our procurement value threshold update report. Thank you. So Ian, take your report as read.
Thank you. So the procurement value threshold was highlighted as one of the risks in the BDO report.
Yep.
And this is part of what I'm doing as a short-term approach before we update or do a thorough review of the policy. So this is a short-term update to the policy, which will be reviewed later in the year. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, thanks, thanks, Gillian. Yeah, just going to your report here in the executive summary and in the context, you've got a comment there that says Northland councils are in the early stages of developing a collective procurement strategy that supports local economic development. It's repeated in the context to some extent as well. When did this collective procurement strategy work program arise? I don't remember us having discussed doing this.
Yes, I did raise this at the last ARF meeting. This is a collective initiative working with Northland Inc. and the other regional council and other councils. We're looking basically at a strategy to use an update to the existing strategy that we have to use local employment and how that might benefit our local economy. So where it's appropriate and when we might use that.
So when did the collective procurement strategy approach that you're adopting come to the full council? When did we decide we wanted to do this?
This is part of what we normally do as our strategy review. So we have an existing strategy that's 5 years old, and this is part of the review process for that.
Okay, so it just sort of looks like the opposite of what we just decided to do, which was to get out of NTA and actually do this.
Oh, not at all, no, not at all. So NZTA requires the roading team to have an NZTA approved strategy. What happened with, so they're going ahead and having to create their own strategy because their timeframes don't meet this collective strategy. Now, this collective strategy is something that we will develop, and we may or may not choose to adopt it. It's not developed yet, and so we don't know what it will look like. And it will be brought to council in time when it's a little bit more formed.
And so when you refer to a collective procurement strategy that supports local economic development, what do you mean by local?
That's part of what will be defined in the strategy. So we're looking at procurement chains and development opportunities, perhaps for local workforce. I don't yet know what the scope of it will be. It's early days. And local employment will be defined in the policy, but we will be encouraging likely procurement within the district where it benefits us, or perhaps bringing in procurement that might train or help to develop or benefit the district in some other way.
Right, so the collective procurement strategy focused on local economic development would mean that in each of the districts in Northland, each one would individually focus on its own local economic development.
Yes, likely, I say. It's not yet developed.
So as far as this collective procurement strategy development process is concerned, who's specifically involved in doing that?
So we've involved Northland Inc. And the representatives from all of the other Northland councils.
So who are those people?
I'm sorry, I'd have to look up all their names for you.
Oh, that'd be good. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah. And I'd also be interested to know what experience they've actually got in collaborative service delivery. Like, well, who are these people? What and
so the procurement
Councillor, we're actually not talking about the strategy at the moment. That's some further work, right? I mean, we're just concentrating at this stage on the policy, the thresholds, and I think it's probably look, not disregarding the questions, but I think it's appropriate. Right? It's not actually going to help us move forward, understand where you want to go, but I think it's probably an offline discussion, if that's okay.
Well, it might be an offline discussion, but this is the first I've seen that this is all going on with this collaborative approach. And so I want to understand what's going on with it, quite frankly.
I did bring it to the last staff meeting when we discussed the strategy and that we were developing one with the collective councils.
Nothing's been set in stone yet, right? It's further.
Early days.
It's early days, and it'll be brought back to council in due course. Right?
I think it needs to come to the whole of council, actually, not just come through here.
Right.
When it's we have a little bit more developed context that could.
For you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. So this is the second time it's come here. You know, we're trying to understand what the most efficient way of doing business is. And enhancing, you know, local use and economic development for the region through procurement strategy. We're just simply informing you that we're doing that work again, and it's fine to come back to the full council. That's not a problem. This actual paper recommends to council anyway, so it's all good. And once we get it a little bit more formed with the team, we'll bring it back to you. So you have some input. There's just no point bringing it to you now because there's nothing to bring to you. We need to just understand it and form it up. I mean, this council's asked us to be efficient and smart in what we do in our business, and this is just one of those things that we'll bring back to.
Okay.
So if I,
The procurement for roading is our biggest item, right?
Yep.
As council. And we had moved away from what was previously occurring with the combined process. This looks like it winds back again to involving other council inputs rather than what we were doing, which was to achieve our own independent situation. So it's pretty important to us that we continue keeping the gains that we've already got and having the involvement of council in that.
I think we're talking cross purposes. This is what we're talking about is the current modified procurement policy. What is also happening is there's some other work being done at a more strategic level, which will be brought back to council. So what we're debating today is amendment to the procurement policy, which we're recommending to council. We're not debating or recommending any change to the procurement strategy as it stands at the moment.
Correct.
All you're doing is you're advising us that that is work that's being undertaken, and there will be further discussion with council over that down the track.
Great.
just a clarification. Thank you, Chair. So I'm not going into the mechanics of who started it. All I'm saying is these figures and these, shall I say, the delegation of authority in different levels is similar in all those three councils, is based on, or is it separate for us? These levels which you have decided for different, is it gonna be all uniform in all the councils? That's the concept?
Through the chair, they are all separate. Northland Regional Council, Far North District Council has much higher thresholds for infrastructure projects than I'm proposing here.
Yeah.
I've proposed levels that are consistent across the organisation and that are the same for NZTA standards, which set the levels for all of our roading procurement, and so that they're consistent across the organisation.
I think that's really important because, as pointed out, roading is our biggest, right?
Yeah.
Procurement, and what you're trying to do is align the NZTA/Kaipara District Council's thresholds consistently across all procurement.
That's right.
Agree.
Okay.
I support it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Councillor Jonathan.
Thank you, Philip. It's in the options presented here on page 108 or page 4 of the item. The recommended option, which is option 1, has an approach that has a direct appointment, whereas the other options, the status quo and at number 3 and the changes one, we have a quote under the status quo and no quote under the others. And so my question would be, if you're going to be handing out direct appointments under 50,000, how do you know that they're actually going to come in under 50,000 if you haven't got a quote?
Well, thank you for pointing that out. Many of our purchases are very low, so small purchases of $2,000 or $3,000, and they're well below the procurement level or threshold. Generally, we get quotes from things, but often it's things are list prices or they're just commonly purchased items where we don't actually need to receive a quote for purchasing goods, toilet paper, minor procurement. So that is an inconsistency, and that's my error. Generally, for less than $50,000, we would usually get a quote if it was something. For example, we've just had some reporting done for one of the buildings, an assessment done. We had a quote done. We received a quote before we went ahead with that. So generally, we would have a quote, but for many of the small items, we wouldn't. They'd just go through our magic system.
I thought this was about NZTA procurement value thresholds.
No, it's about all of KDC procurement thresholds. This is our procurement policy that applies across KDC.
So if we are doing a piece of work which we think is going to be under $50,000 on the roads, and it's a direct appointment, and we're not requiring a quote, how do we know it's going to overrun it?
Can I clarify? This is not saying we don't require a quote, right? Right?
Correct.
So what this is saying, the procurement policy is saying when we go and acquire that piece of work, we can ask Joe for a quote. We don't actually have to go ask Joe, Fred, and Harry for quotes. That's all we're saying.
So through the chair, can I just clarify, because I think Councillor Larson's correct. He just wants the words that we had down at the status quo with quote put up into our new option.
Yep.
So that there's an understanding that we would be getting a quote.
Yeah.
There's a distinct difference between the status quo and the recommended option, which stands out.
So through the chair, when I bring this paper to council, I can add with the quote to that paper.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Any further comments or? Yep.
All I would say is I think it's a good, regardless of what has been said so far, is a good exercise to hold NZTA is the one which provides most of the subsidy to us. And if they have some threshold which are working, I think we should follow them. So I think it's a good initiative.
Yeah, thank you. So you're supportive of the change. Okay. Just to, yeah.
I go first, or?
Oh, I've got a couple of questions, but just clarification. Have you got a?
Yeah, just with the staff recommendation at Part B, I certainly see some sense in adjusting the thresholds on these values, but at Part B it says approves other proposed updates. Could we just run through what they are, please?
Yes. So if you look at in the paper under other proposed changes, and I did track changes in the proposed policy document. So, and that they're basically to update the policy to reflect the current situation and make it more accurate. So under section 6, I edited that clause because it said that council policy would take precedence over other policies. Well, that directly contradicts the NZTA policy, which says that their policy has to take precedence over ours, as does other government-funded policies. So I've updated that clause to reflect that. Section 6, some of the policies that were listed don't exist, and so I've updated that to reflect the policies that we do have and that are current. Section 8.7 contained a number of references to emissions targets and the climate action plan, which has been stopped, so I deleted those references. Section 11 is a new section. Currently, the policy has no facility for exceptions, and so I added a clause there to allow a provision for exceptions.
Can we just go back?
What?
So on section 9.8,
9.8.
there's a track change there which doesn't make quite sense
Okay.
to me. It's on page 12 of the track changes document.
Okay. Got it. Yes.
Crossing out 50 but replacing it with 50. Is that the way I read it?
Yes. Yes. Yes, there is an error there. You're quite right. If the value is over 50,000, run the proposed tender process, that should be over 100,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's actually in the doc.
That's right. I edited that a number of times.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Yep.
Thank you.
Carry on.
Appendix 1.
Oh, sorry. Can we just go back to you've added the exceptions?
Yes. So I've
really pleased you've done that. Can I say the issue is here is that in these instances, approval of the procurement plan must be sought from the chief executive.
Yes.
The question I have, right, but for a very large procurement, right, exceeding the chief executive's procurement delegation, should that then not come to council? Right, I'm just trying to think, you know, the chief executive's got certain delegations. If it's exceeding his delegation, which would be reasonably rare, would it not?
No, not necessarily. No, they're not.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, it goes, but should, if it's over your delegations, chief executive, should that procurement plan where it's not in line with the procurement policy then come to council? That's just a question I have.
In the previous update to the policy, which happened when we updated our delegations at the end of, middle of last year, that the requirement for staff to bring procurement plans to council was deleted and approved by council.
Oh, okay.
So procurement plans are no longer approved by council. However, there is always provision if there is a really exceptional approach to procurement, for example, a relationship perhaps approach where we might bring it for discussion to council.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, you know.
That would be at the advice of the chief executive. Okay. So he has he would have delegation to approve procurement plans, but may recommend that we bring it to council.
But that's only over the procurement plan, right? The question I have is if we're going and we decide to go, say, for example, direct appointment for $2 million, which is a large amount of money, right?
Yes.
Which is outside of the policy.
Yes.
Can the chief executive make that decision, or should that be made by council? That's my question, right? It's actually protecting the whole of council, right? That's what I'm just trying to get in terms of that exception to the procurement.
In theory, under the policy, it could, but the chief executive would use his judgment to recommend an approach in that situation.
My risk-averse approach, right, would be that where procurement is outside of the chief executive's delegation, right, and that he decides to go for direct, move outside of the procurement policy, that technically it should come to council to protect everybody's interest.
Okay. So if I add to clause 11, then when it's outside the chief executive's delegation, that it is brought to council.
I mean, they'll just refer to the chief executive, right? I don't want to put an extra burden on process to make process efficient, you know?
There's a balance,
Mr. Yeah, that's I'm trying to get that right balance. Yeah. Where is that level?
Yeah, you know, it'd be crazy for me to approve something, say $2 million using your example and not bring that to council.
Yeah, I know, but
Yeah.
just bearing in mind, right, that you may not, right, that this, and I know you're reviewing the procurement policy later in the year, and I don't want to create a whole lot of additional work, but I'm just trying to put the right balance and threshold in. So I'm seeking your advice, Mr. Chief Executive. Where is that level? Where do you see that level?
Relatively low would be my approach to that. You know, we've got a very sort of open and transparent policy with our council.
Yep.
That's how we roll. So, you know, I'd be expecting, based on that I would come to the council, either in a briefing to start with, or even just a council decision making. So we can work on that.
I think I don't want to debate it any further now, right? I would actually saying is that you as the policy holder, right, have discussions with the chief executive and take that discussion back to council, right?
Great, thank you.
Okay, and I would probably reflect that in the resolution, right? That somehow we add in B, we note the other proposed updates and noting that where a procurement plan exceeds the chief executive, that this be further updated, right, as part of the final procurement recommendation to council. Did you get that? Sorry, Alana?
Sorry,
Yep.
noting that where a procurement plan exceeds the chief executive
Yep.
delegation.
Yep.
Delegation.
Further consideration be brought back to final adoption by council. So that then, right, flags to chief executive and to the officer that that needs to be considered as part of your report. That's all we're saying.
Yep, thank you.
Committee members comfortable with that? But we're not making a final decision. What we're saying is the chief executive and the report writer will actually consider that in terms of options, how that is actually played out. Bearing in mind we want to be efficient and effective, but we also want open, transparent.
Are you wanting to do this by consensus? Or?
No, all I'm saying is now is that's what, I want to do that by consensus now. We're not actually putting a threshold or a process in place because we don't have all the information. But what we're recommending is when that comes back to council, that be part of the report and final recommendations.
I'm happy with that. I also want to foreshadow an amendment if that is seconded as part of.
Well, all I'm concerned about.
But if it's going to be easier, I can just bring up what I want to amend now.
That would be my preference.
Okay, well, let's do that then.
Because part of my concern is if we go moving amendments, right, we potentially can run out of people, right? Okay, I'd rather have that discussion before we move anything. So what's your...
That's fine. So you're going to have an amended B and C.
Yeah. What's your suggestion? Not an amendment. What's your...
I'm going to suggest that we add a further clause. So if we put after C and.
Yeah.
Go at dictation speed for Alana.
Yeah.
And then put a new D that says that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee recommends to Kaipara District Council that the proposed collective Northland procurement strategy approach be presented at a briefing of the full council for direction for proceeding further.
Mr. Chief Executive, implications?
I don't think there are any implications apart from timeframes. I'll just see if I get a nod from Gillian in that space.
Timeframes would be challenging, yes. We would need to get the input quickly so that we can continue with the work.
We'll work on that in the background.
Sure.
Okay.
Can I just, sorry for the chair?
Yeah.
Are we, is the amended B that you propose still remains?
That would be my,
Yes.
you happy with that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then C?
See?
Yeah, I'm not, I'm
Yep.
just doing
Just
my
the
consent.
D.
Yeah, I just want to have that.
Easier to do that. It's not for the preferred, so.
Then there's a D.
And there's the D. Welcome, Councillor Aaron. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Have you any comments on that, on what Councillor Larson?
I'd love it to be read again. Or
Yeah.
On the, on, I can put it on the
Mm.
screen, because it was a bit of a novel.
Call it a novel. It's
Compared to the ABC that we've got.
it's a significant addition. Yeah. Oh, right. Yes. Yeah, it is almost doubles the word. Yeah. You're blowing it up bigger for us with.
Mr. Chair, if I can just say, with D, the first part of it is actually covered in the right at the very start.
Yep.
Except that it's not, because it says to, not that. How?
Rick.
Well, to competition.
Yep. So, yep. So we therefore get rid of, right?
Just to make it simple, right?
Yep. Make it, I like simple. Yep.
Recommends to Coventry to Council at the top that it, A, approves, B, notes, C, notes,
Yep.
D, agrees.
Sorry, if I may ask, A is not required anymore. We don't approve the proposed updates.
I think we're still approving the updated thresholds, yes, but it's still recommending. So we don't, so all we're saying is we don't approve.
Well, that will be approved by council, I
Yeah.
guess.
So that it approves. Yeah, right. Yep. And I think then, okay, that's the problem. B then becomes a problem.
I would say take the A off and just,
Right. Can I suggest that B then becomes, right, that if we're recommending to the council, it notes the proposed updates. Yeah. We're a procurement plan, right? I would change that wording then, right? To after delegation, the wording there should be then having received the further consideration, right? So that's actually then saying is we're suggesting a change be made, right? Right, but also then having the further consideration that is brought back to council, right? Right? From a procedural perspective, all we're saying is we're recommending that be given further consideration before.
Yeah, in my dictation, I don't believe I used the words agrees that, and I don't.
No, we haven't got to you yet. I'm just debating B.
That's fine, but I thought you had finished what you were suggesting.
Oh, I haven't.
Now moving to the next.
I know I haven't finished. I'm just looking for feedback on B. Is B now appropriate?
Sorry, I'm still stick to A. Instead of approved, we should say note proposed update to the procurement, because we are not approving anything.
No, well, at the very top, we're recommending that the
Council approves.
So that's a D is fine, but A is in conflict with it. How can you?
You need to read the sentence above that. We're recommending to the Kaipara District Council that it approves. We're
Yes.
approving it.
No,
It approves the proposed
but
update.
A is redundant.
That's not.
No.
Because if we are approving the proposed updates, we are taking it on face value and we agree with it. And then we want some further updates on procurement plan exceeding C's thing. And then we say policy review and blah, blah, whatever. But A is the deciding. If you have approved it, you can't change those figures.
We can't approve it. We're recommending to the council that it.
Yeah, so you should not use the word A. I'm not happy with that.
So what are you suggesting?
All I'm saying is audit risk finance committee, because we are not deciding on it. We note the proposed changes. We note that other proposed updates required. We note the full policy review, agrees on the D. That's it. We cannot approve with A.
No, we're not. What we are recommending, we're not noting it. We have debated the threshold limits as the committee. And we actually agree that those thresholds are appropriate. Therefore, we are recommending to council that they approve it, right? That's not saying that the council can't disagree with us, but that is our recommendation to council, that we are recommending to council that they approve those limits. Do you agree or disagree with that, councillor?
Well, I disagree, because when it comes to full council, some of the people may not agree.
That's fine. That's then up to council to actually say we disagree, right? But what we are doing is we're sending a strong recommendation to council that we collectively agree with it. Now, do you agree, councillor, that those thresholds should be updated? Yes or no?
I do.
Okay. Therefore, right, I think what we're doing is, right, collectively we agree that that's an appropriate recommendation. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Larson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect, I think that with the greatest of respect, the Chief Executive's amendment to this has caused problems with it grammatically, because we now have that it after the word council, and when you go to C, we are trying to note it as a committee.
Okay.
Now recommending that council note it.
Okay.
Why I had drafted it with the fourth part.
Yeah. Okay.
Acting separately. Now that they've been conflated, it doesn't work.
I think the problem we have is with A as well, right? Right. And I think
if you revert to what I had,
we're going to need two resolutions.
Well, no, you don't need two resolutions. You just need to put it how I had dictated it, and then it wouldn't have gone out of context.
But I think
they are okay. They are two resolutions. Make D a separate resolution if you want to.
Well, I think the problem is we've actually got potentially 4 recommendations there, right? Because what we're saying is we actually, right? Maybe it's me, right? We actually, yes, we agree, and we are recommending to council that we agree with the thresholds. That's what we actually have all agreed with, right? And then the problem we've then got is actually with B and C, right? Is where we're actually noting, right? And then we've then got a further, right? No disrespect, right? We've then got a further recommendation that you're asking council to give direction to the procurement strategy before it actually proceeds with the Northern procurement strategy. I think that's the problem we've actually now got, right? No disrespect to anybody. I think that's summation of the problem. So let's try and solve it, right? So first of all, let's take them one at a time, right? Maybe we're going to have to do it separately. Let's try and roll it all up into one and be efficient, right? So one is that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee recommends to Council, and I think we just take them one at a time, right? Right? We approve that it approves the update to the procurement value thresholds, right? So that's one, right?
Sorry, you're going to be doing these in parts?
Yeah, I'll do it. No, I'll do. I think we need actually 4 separate resolutions that we actually, right? Because I think just hold. Can I hold fire?
Okay.
Then, right, that the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee recommends to the Kaipara District Council, right, as a B, right?
Sorry, B is just going to be a standalone.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do it this way, right? No, sorry. Maybe we need a 5-minute recess while we do this, right?
Can we, is that all right?
Yeah, can we take a 5-minute recess while we just quickly,
Yeah.
right, work this out grammatically, right? Thank you. Who's on? Okay, all right. Do we need to say reconvene again? Right. So do I have a mover there for the first part of it that we update? Thank you, Councillor Ash. Do I have a seconder? I'll second. Okay, can I have a mover for the second part, please? Okay. Yeah, we'll do it. Yeah, we'll do it as two separate ones. Yeah. Councillor Jonathan moved it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
To the mic.
Oh, go, you want to speak to them? Absolutely.
Second one anyway.
Okay, yeah, you can speak to it.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like we're going back into this procurement and approach where we've got these, like we've got a panel that I don't even really know how that's working with all the councils, and then we've got this procurement stuff going on that I wasn't aware of, strategies and stuff, and I don't know who the people are on the groups, and when I ask who they are, no one seems to know, and all that sort of stuff. So I think the whole council needs to get their head around what we're doing here strategically, because we've just gone through extremely long process of taking all of our roading back in-house, and it seems like it's all going back out into a joint collaborative approach again. So we need to have a closer look at this and make sure that we are heading in the direction we want to go. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
I can speak as a seconder. Thank you, Chair. All I was, as I said earlier on, I think it's a step in the right direction if NZTA standards are being followed. NZTA is, as I mentioned before, is our largest, actually our godfather, because in terms of subsidies, and also being on Regional Transport Committee, I can see how much he's a valued partner there as well. So a lot of roadworks happen with the courtesy of NZTA, and the procurement is one policy which has to be having a no eyes raised. So if they have thresholds proposed, I think we should willingly take them over. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
As it against carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gillian. That took longer than we thought, but it was a good outcome. Next item is 4.6, our policies and bylaws update. Thank you. Virginia, thank you. Take your report as read. Any key highlights or further information you want to bring to councillors' attention?
Yes, through the chair, just an update
on page 2 of my report around the update on the Council Director Development Contributions Policy Review. I have put in there that a workshop is planned in March for elected members. That's been changed to April 4th. So that change has been made between the time that the report was written and today. So that's the only change to the report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Councillor Aaron, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I just want to get some understanding around the backlog of policies that are required to be updated. I completely understand because of my day job, I'm not up to date with my policy reviews either. So I'm not, trying to throw, hold a stick or anything, but I just noticed that there's not a lot of movement in the backlog, and it looks like between our ARF meetings, there's about 2 policies that are able to be updated in the meantime.
Yeah.
So is that a staffing? Are you under the pump a bit?
I think, well, you can see that most of those are non-statutory.
Council.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of things. It could be that because we're moved into this new register where we've got GMs that actually own the policies and they're responsible. I'm the only one person at the moment that can provide that technical policy advice, which is great. It's fine. It's working really well. But again, we're just having those teething problems.
Okay.
Is what I'm finding. And so I'm not concerned about the non-statutory ones. Council's real risk is around those statutory, meeting those statutory timeframes. And so those ones will always be prioritised over non-statutory.
Yeah.
Generally also too, the non-statutory ones are internal policies. So there's this great saying, if it isn't broke, as well. So yeah, for me, it's about prioritising, making sure that council stays in that compliance level with our statutory requirements and obligations. But yeah, I honestly think everyone's doing really great. We've got, for instance, Gillian, she owns the procurement policy. She's leading that.
Yeah.
She's doing a fabulous job. And so are other GMs. So I think that over time we'll see that list start coming down quite fast.
Okay. So I suppose my concern is just checking in that the staff are that it's not a weight above the staff having to try and get through this backlog.
No,
I think it's all okay.
Yeah, I think they're doing really well. It was bigger before, so I'm quite happy with the progress that we're making.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Good to know.
Yeah.
John, thank you. Any other questions? My only question and comment is on the development contributions policy. As of course the government decided to change the play, not just the rule book, the whole playing field a couple of weeks ago. And does that actually impact on the policy and development thereof? Are we actually wasting our time, Mr. Chief Executive?
We might have a comment as well. Through you, Mr. Chair. So we don't actually know the detail of the development levy approach at all yet. So I think my advice to the council would be push through and do the development contributions policy as we plan to, that we have it updated and in place, and we'll adjust to whatever we need to, and the government does whatever it wants to do. How's that?
Whenever. Yeah. All right. Just a general question. Thank you.
It's through the chair. There's actually 2 things that are affecting our development contributions policy, and that's going to be the waters, local waters, one as well, because they can make that water entity can make its own development contributions policy, and it can either adopt the current council's development contribution policy for water infrastructure, or it can make its own, and it can also come into agreement with council whether they want council to keep collecting on their behalf or if they're going to collect on themselves. So that's going to have an impact as well.
Thank you. Thank you. No further questions. We've got a recommendation there that it notes and accepts the policy and bylaws update. Do I have a mover? Councillor Aaron. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
I just how much you love your job.
Thank you. Well, policy people tend to, right? Not like us poor bean counters, eh, Jesse? Right. I didn't say you didn't love the policy. Right. Right. Health, safety and wellbeing update. Welcome, Jonathan. Take your report as read. Any key highlights you want to bring to the committee's attention?
Just through the chair, we've just started, it was early days of doing our audit, so we've increased. There were some questions around waste minimisation audits. We started those in November. You'll see those just in that report, and we plan to increase those. So.
Thank you. Any questions? No, thanks for the update on those audits. And I do like that little graph, the little table about is it high standard, acceptable, needs improvement, and dangerous. But I think that's really good, right? My question is on page 6 of your report, and it's page 166 of the agenda, and it's headed up top of the page. Lead indicate to near-miss reporting. Workplace aggression, right? Would you say that's actually a near-miss, or would you actually say that's an event?
Yeah, that's through the chair. That's to be debated. I suppose it depends on the result, and if we're using psychosocial, could probably call it an event. If that's where you were heading with that. At the moment, we're calling it a near miss. I think we need to have a look at that again.
Yeah, I mean, to me, if we're saying is that aggression towards our people is unacceptable, therefore, in my opinion, that's an event. Right? Right? It's actually sending a strong message to the community that it's not a near miss, it's actually an event, right? And we do not tolerate abusive or threatening behaviour by anybody. Any other comments? My other one too is I would actually say, I know you're reporting it, right? But your number of audits that you're doing, to me, that actually is a lead indicator. I don't want to see it reported twice, but it's a lead indicator, because if you're doing audits, then hopefully that's a preventative nature, which is actually a good thing. Something you might want to consider as part of your future reporting.
Disagree. I think I put it in there as a lead indicator.
Oh, okay. I just didn't, yeah.
Maybe I put it in the order, put the order wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a lead indicator.
Yeah.
Report.
Oh, it is a lead. Yes, it is a lead. But I just actually wonder, a summary, right? I actually like summaries because some of us like to skim the agenda to begin with. And if you had a little summary, lead indicators, you know, where they are as total, where they're tracking, nice little graph or something.
Absolutely. Do that.
All right, good report. Thank you. Any other questions? Getting off easy now. All right. Okay, so we the recommendation is there that we note the health, safety and wellbeing update. Can I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Aaron. Seconded. Mayor Craig, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. A regulatory compliance update. So, you stayed pretty quiet up until now. Take the report as read.
Yes, the only things I'll note to you, building consents, they're 30% down. It hasn't quite turned yet. And yes, I think, yeah, and so that's an issue for us, because obviously we've got doing less building consents than previously, and our revenue and our revenue's not there that we've provided for the revenue and financing policy. And in resource consents, the same thing is happening, but it's only 20% down. Yeah, and that's not as much an issue when you look at the revenue and financing policy, because they're utilising contractors already, so that basically we use less contractors for that. But with the building consents, we've got mostly internal staff. On the only other thing I'll point out is on infrastructure. Whangawhai Browns Road irrigation dam, we've had no more complaints since Christmas, but there's nothing else serious that we're not managing in the report.
Okay. Any questions?
So we're talking compliance, is it? So I have a couple of questions. One, obviously, on the page 175, which says about wastewater, and it tells about where it's non-compliant, but I'm just interested in Dargaville wastewater. Don't we have the abatement notices anymore from NRC?
I have to defer to the GM infrastructure if he knows of any, but that hadn't been reported through to us.
Because in the council briefing and meeting, we have talked about many abatement notices, and I'm surprised to see there's none here mentioned to the committee. So it'll be good if you can investigate and let us know. On Maganoi Bluff toilets, it was like a couple of years ago raised, and it's a small toilet already existent, and I don't see what is holding and why community consultation and all those things. And when it was done, it is quite a grief when you end up with toilet situations, little coming to audit and finance committee. Yeah. So what's holding it up now? And when the consultation happened?
So the consultation happened on the 7th of January, so early in the new year. And the reason we're consulting with the community is that we have to change the toilet location.
Yeah,
so
right.
Toilet was impacted by roots from pūtakawa trees. It's got significant land around it. It's, facing the ocean. So we need to find a solid point with the community that they agree on.
So when?
That consultation is complete. They provided us information that they wanted an additional toilet that fits within our budget. We're delivering that for them. So that project is underway.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. So can I have a mover for the recommendation, please? I'll move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Aaron. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Next item 4.9, our resolution of our past audit recommendations. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just say the first one on the report, the Deloitte's constructive report, which talks about community loans. This will be sorted by 30th of June, as we'll know about whether there's a targeted rate or not. And the auditors are recommending that we write that off, and they have been for the last 2 years, and we've resisted it by advising them that we're looking at a targeted rate that would help the museums to be able to repay the money they owe us. Land drainage, a lot of the revaluation stuff, it's not started. There's no, we just don't have staff in the revaluation in the asset management area helping. So it's just in progress.
Can I just ask a question? I mean, I would have all thought land drainage in terms of revaluation was a low risk, but you've got it as medium impact. Do you want to clarify? It's orange?
Yes, you look,
yeah, maybe next time we just comment on why it's, look, why it's orange, I don't understand, right?
Okay, I'll look at that. I mean, this is a report put together of all the recommendations. They're not necessarily financial recommendations.
Look, I don't understand why it's orange. Okay.
Noted, and I haven't got anything else to.
Okay. Well, I've got my next question is immediately below. Where are you on the sub basis? I know I'm passionate about this because I don't think you should be depreciating them.
Right. I will refer to.
Chair, we will be investigating that this year, seeing if we can make a change and amongst the rest of the evaluation.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, can I have a mover that we note the resolution of the past audit recommendations?
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Craig. Seconded, Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. Can I have a mover? We move into public excluded.
Yep.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Ash. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
30 seconds.